Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed. At 1,000 subscribers, I'll be posting a special video. The banking alert popped up and our savings balance dropped in front of me. I am Aaron, 29, and everything in my chest went tight. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over refresh again. For a moment, I honestly thought the app was broken or hacked. The number did not move when I refreshed, it just sat there. Yesterday, that balance was burned into my brain like a safety net. Now it looked like someone had scooped a huge bite out. My tongue felt dry and my ring dug into my skin harder. I zoomed in on the list of recent transactions and scrolled slowly. Tiny lines of text stacked up like they were waiting for me. Same company name, same withdrawal pattern, over and over in quiet rows. I did not recognize it, which scared me more than the amount. You know that weird second when your brain picks one detail only? Mine grabbed that unknown processor name and would not let go. I whispered it out loud just to hear how it sounded. It did not sound like groceries or rent or anything normal at all. I glanced toward the kitchen where Mark was humming at the counter. His voice floated down the hallway like nothing in the world was wrong. For a second, I considered locking my phone and pretending I saw nothing. Instead, I took a screenshot and my hand actually shook over the button. The app showed another transfer, leaving the same account that morning already. My thumb hovered over the line, then I tapped into the details. The description was useless, just that generic company name and services spelled out. My heart started beating so loud I could hear it in my ears. I backed out of the app and checked the total change this month. The difference slapped me harder than any argument we had ever had. Around 10,000 gone, not moved to another one of our accounts. Not sitting anywhere I could see, just vanished into those anonymous charges. I tried to breathe slowly and count like people say you should. My chest refused to cooperate, my breaths came short and fast and ugly. From the kitchen I heard a drawer slam, then water running too long. Every small noise felt suspicious, like the walls suddenly knew more than me. Mark, I called his name once just to test my own voice. It came out thinner than I expected, almost like someone else speaking. He yelled back something casual about dinner and asked if I wanted takeout. I stared at the phone instead because food felt insane in that moment. I opened the savings history again and checked older months one by one. The pattern had not started today, it stretched back further than I guessed. Smaller amounts at first, then bigger chunks once the line had been crossed. My hands went cold when I realized I had missed this for weeks. Part of me tried to jump in and defend him automatically, out of habit. Maybe he moved money to a new account and forgot to mention it. Maybe there was some business thing, some boring explanation I would not understand. Another part of me just stared at the word services and felt sick. I scrolled down to the very first transaction with that same company name. It dated back months, sitting there quiet like a fuse I never noticed. I tapped it open and stared at the amount, then the next one. The series looked intentional, like someone slowly testing how far they could go. Everything okay? Mark's voice floated closer as his footsteps came down the hall. I snapped the phone face down on my leg way too fast. My heart did that guilty jump, even though I was not the one hiding anything. He stepped into the doorway, wiping his hands on a dish towel slowly. Yeah, fine, the words came out before I decided to use them. He watched me a second longer than normal, eyes dropping to my lap. The corner of the phone peeked out from under my fingers like evidence. I forced a smile that felt stiff, and his gaze lingered one heartbeat longer. He changed the subject first, started talking about some game on later tonight. I nodded at the right spots while my mind stayed locked inside the app. Every laugh I gave felt delayed, like I was playing my own echo. At the same time, a new thought nudged in, colder than the rest. This was our future money, not just leftover cash from a random paycheck. This was the account we always promised not to touch unless we agreed. The place we joked about as house or kids or whatever comes first. Seeing his mouth move while I held that knowledge felt like standing on ice. He walked back to the kitchen and the moment almost slipped away. I could have left it there, blamed stress, closed the app, let it slide. Instead, I turned the phone over again and opened a note with shaky fingers. I typed the company name, the exact spelling, and saved it like a threat. Looking back now, I know that was the moment the story split. Before that line, I lived in the version where we were fine. After that note, I started living in the version where something was rotting. At the time, I told myself it was just caution, but my gut already knew. I typed that weird company label into the search bar and hit enter. The shower ran down the hall, loud enough that I could hear it through the door. My fingers hovered above the screen, while the results loaded way too slowly. I remember thinking, if this is nothing, I am the crazy one. The page filled with links for betting platforms and funding your wagers guides. One description mentioned discrete payment handling for online sportsbooks, and my stomach flipped. It felt like someone grabbed my earlier anxiety and turned the volume higher. I scrolled down anyway, hoping for some innocent explanation that never appeared. A new notification flashed from our bank while I stared at the results. Another withdrawal, same label, just processed that afternoon like it was routine. I clicked it open and watched the amount sit there, not huge but not small. In my head, I multiplied it by the other lines and wanted to gag. The water in the bathroom cut off and my pulse jumped into my throat. I cleared the browser history with 3 quick taps, way more panic than necessary. The phone almost slipped from my hand as I locked the screen fast. I sat rigid on the edge of the bed when the door opened. He walked in rubbing his hair with a towel, talking about a close game tonight. I nodded too quickly and tucked the phone under my leg like contraband. He glanced at me, then at the phone, then moved to his dresser. That tiny pause sat between us like a question I refused to answer. Later, we landed on the couch, some pregame show already running on the TV. He scrolled through his phone with quick swipes, jaw tight, eyes locked. I watched the reflection on the screen and caught numbers changing near a place bet button. My chest went tight again, but my voice came out weirdly light. "How much are you throwing on this one?" I asked, aiming for playful. He kept his thumb on the screen, then tilted the phone away like nothing. "Just a little action keeps it interesting." His foot bounced against the table. He looked over with this grin that felt pasted on top of worry. "So little like what?" I pushed, because once you start you cannot unsee. He sucked in a breath, then shrugged like it bored him. "Couple bucks here and there, nothing compared to what we've put aside." The words landed heavy, because I knew more than he guessed I knew. I almost threw the withdrawals in his face right there. Instead I laughed, a thin weird sound that did not feel like me. I made some joke about him becoming a sports guru and changed the subject. If I am honest, that was me stalling because truth felt dangerous. After he fell asleep on the couch, I picked up his phone carefully. The betting app still glowed on the screen, showing recent slips and totals. One line showed a loss bigger than what he called a couple bucks. My thumb hovered over more details, and then a new alert popped up. Another wager appeared in real time, already marked as pending with our team highlighted. I stared at the number attached and felt this hot rush of anger. He was asleep, but his money was out there moving without him. Worse, a chunk of that pile used to be ours, not just his. I dropped the phone back beside him when he shifted and muttered. He curled closer to the cushion and pulled the throw over his shoulder. I stood there watching his face relax while my mind ran circles. Part of me wanted to shake him awake, part of me wanted proof first. The next morning I woke up before my alarm with my jaw clenched. I opened our banking app again and refreshed the transactions list in silence. 2 more withdrawals had cleared overnight, tied to that same payment handler. I stared at the dates lined up in order and felt something inside harden. I wish I could tell you I confronted him right then. Instead, I slid the phone away when he walked in asking about coffee. I told myself I needed to understand the full picture before exploding. Back then I called that being careful, now it mostly feels like denial. All day at work my brain kept bouncing between spreadsheets and those charges. Every time my email pinged, I half expected another financial alert to appear. I replayed his casual little action line until I wanted to throw something. By lunch I had already decided that tonight I was done pretending. When I got home he was parked in front of another game, already locked in. The same app sat open beside him, screen glowing with tiny moving numbers. He barely looked up when I dropped my bag, his jaw tight again. That was the moment I realized this was not just entertainment anymore. I walked over, grabbed the remote, and cut the sound mid-play. The room snapped quiet except for his annoyed breath coming through his teeth. He stared at me, then at the blank screen, like I had unplugged life support. My pulse hammered and I still forced the first words out. See, anyway. We need to talk about our savings. I kept my eyes on him. He leaned back like I had asked about the weather and not money. It's fine, I moved some stuff around. His fingers drummed on his leg. That detail hit me harder than the words because he looked rehearsed. I pulled my phone out and opened the account before I chickened out. The numbers glared up between us while I held the screen midway. This is not some little adjustment. My voice shook, but I kept going. There are withdrawals with a processor I had to search to understand. His jaw tightened for a split second, then relaxed too fast to be real. That service, it's just where the bets clear through, he muttered toward the table. He reached for the phone and I jerked it back like it burned. Show me your app instead, I said, and that surprised both of us. For a heartbeat he did not move, like his muscles forgot how to cooperate. Then he unlocked his screen and opened the betting app with jerky motions. He angled the phone away, thumbs sliding over numbers as if he could erase them. Here, look, it tracks everything, he finally muttered, pushing it toward my hand. The dashboard showed totals and recent results, but one line froze me. There was a running figure labeled net staring at me like a dare. The loss number sat higher than the chunk missing from our nest egg. My throat closed and the room tilted just enough to make me grab the couch. This is not a few small wagers, I managed, louder than I planned. You are down more than our entire contribution this year alone. He rubbed his forehead hard, then laughed once, this dry, nervous sound. It looks worse on paper, the wins don't show the way they should. I pointed at the screen without touching it, like it was contaminated. That is not a rounding error, this is a crater, my voice cracked halfway. He dropped his hand and his shoulders sagged, like the act was too heavy. I got stuck chasing one bad weekend, it spiraled, came out barely above a whisper. I wanted to scream that one weekend does not last for months. Instead I heard myself ask, why use our shared account, not your own? He glanced at my ring and then away, face flushing in an instant. I thought I could replace it quick, then I kept trying to fix it. You know that moment when your brain tries to defend someone and fails? Part of me tried to file this under mistake, not complete betrayal. Another part looked at that big red total and felt something snap. I realized he had gambled with the one thing we both promised to protect. I need you to answer this straight, I said, fingers clutching my knees. Is any other account connected, any card with my name, anything else? He swore no, eyes wide, hands up like I had pointed a weapon. I did not believe him, not fully, but I clocked that denial for later. Delete it, the words came out flat and final, and I almost startled myself. He blinked, then scoffed like I had suggested he quit breathing. I can get us back even, I am close, the next slate looks good. Every sentence sounded like a script he had used on himself all week. I leaned in until he could not ignore my face or my shaking mouth. There is no next slate with our money, I tapped the savings app again. You are either done with this or we are done planning anything together. The silence after that line felt thick, like the whole place held its breath. He stared at the TV, still black, then at his phone again. With a slow thumb he pressed and held the betting icon until it wobbled. For a second I thought he would bail and drop it back onto the screen. Instead he hit delete and the logo vanished, and my stomach twisted anyway. Happy now, he tossed the phone beside him, eyes shining with anger. I did not answer because I knew deleting one square fixed nothing. We check every account on Sunday, I said, hearing my voice go cold. If anything else is off, I am talking to the bank without you. He opened his mouth, then closed it, then nodded once with his jaw clenched. Sunday then, he muttered, grabbing the remote and turning the sound back on. The game roared to life while our conversation hung unfinished in the air. I sat there beside him, watching players run while my future limped. That night after he started snoring, I reached for his phone again. The app icon was gone, like we had imagined the whole mess. I dug into settings and found a fresh notification from the same payment service. It showed profile credentials stored, and my chest tightened in a new way. He had deleted the shortcut, not the connection, not the habit. I dropped the phone back exactly where it had been and stared at the ceiling. In that quiet stretch, I knew Sunday was not going to bring comfort. It was going to drag everything he still hid into the light, whether I was ready or not. His message popped up right before the time we agreed to review everything. Got called. In double shift, rain check tonight, with a shrug emoji. I stared at the screen so long it went dark in my hand. That was the second lie of this whole thing, and my spine knew it. I opened our bank on my laptop before I even replied to him. If he was busy at work, then I would be busy here. The login screen blurred for a second because my eyes were already burning. I shoved that down and typed my password like I was clocking in for war. The balance hit me first, lower than the last time we fought about it. A few more withdrawals had gone through since the night he deleted the app. Same gambling handler name showed up on some, just enough to sting. Then another line caught my attention and froze my scroll mid-movement. This one had a different label, shorter, no hint of sports anywhere. I clicked into the details and found only a code and subscription platform. My throat went dry in that very obvious way your body warns you. I copied the new label into a search tab and pressed enter with my thumb. The top result was an adult live streaming site with a smiling banner. I did not even click a video, the headlines were clear enough. Words like private room, exclusive chat, and loyal fans jumped out in bold. My vision narrowed and I actually said no way out loud to myself. I backed out to the bank window and hit the filter by that company. Rows of payments filled the screen, stretching back months in neat order. Not one or two, not a one-time stupid experiment on a bad night. There were recurring charges, stacked every week like some twisted membership fee. I ran a quick total on my phone calculator, hands shaking over the numbers. The sum climbed faster than I expected, past what I knew about the bets. So this was not just losing on games, this was something separate. Something he thought deserved its own pipeline of our shared money. I opened the most recent charge and checked the time stamp carefully. It lined up with nights he had stayed up to watch highlights. Nights I went to bed early because I had morning meetings. Nights I assumed he was just decompressing, not renting someone's attention. My ring felt too tight all of a sudden, and I yanked it off. It rolled once on the desk and stopped against the side of the laptop. I stared at that little circle and thought, this is what he is risking. Then another thought slid in behind it, dark and embarrassing. If there was a subscription, there was probably an account with his details. I opened a new tab and went to the streaming site's login page. The sign-up field blinked at me like it wanted a dare. I tried his favorite username and hit forgot password just to check. An email notice flashed on my phone almost instantly, confirming a reset request. My stomach lurched because that meant his info was really in their system. I bit my lip, opened his email on my device, and tapped the link. Yes, I know how invasive that sounds now, but in that moment I just needed truth. The site loaded his profile page once I set a new password and logged in. His chosen screen name stared back at me, something cocky I recognized from other apps. Underneath, there was a list of creators he followed with little heart icons. One name sat at the top with a top supporter badge next to it. I clicked on her profile and a whole tip history opened in a column. Token amounts blurred together, but the dates hit me like separate punches. Birthdays, holidays, weekends, I thought we were broke and staying in on purpose. All those nights he was apparently treating someone who did not even know my existence. There was a section for recent chat messages, and I scrolled a few lines. His username popped up asking about her day, complimenting how perfect she looked. In one message he wrote, "Wish I could be there in person someday." My ears rang and I had to put my forehead down on my arm. I kept reading even though every line made me feel smaller than the last. He told her he worked long hours and she made things bearable. He said he felt underappreciated in real life, but she got him. The words real life hit hard because apparently I was the background extra. At one point she replied, "You're my favorite, don't disappear on me." Under that, another tip logged immediately, bigger than the others around it. I could almost see him at this same desk, grinning at a screen, sending away pieces of our savings to keep a stranger typing sweet lines. My phone buzzed again with another text from him while I scrolled. Still slammed, might crash at a colleague's if it goes late. I pictured him in a break room or maybe parked outside somewhere. Anywhere but where he had promised to be when we planned this review. I did not answer him right away. I opened the statements instead. Downloaded the last few months and highlighted every charge to gambling and this site. By the time I finished, the pages looked like a crime scene with ink. Each circle around a date felt like another nail in whatever future we had. I laid the stack on the table and lined them up in order. On top, I printed the screenshot of his favorite creator with that badge. My hands shook, but this time it was less panic and more rage. It felt like I was curating an exhibit of the life he hid from me. Eventually, I texted back, "We need to talk in person, today, not later." The typing dots appeared, disappeared, then came back like he could not commit to an answer. Finally, his reply landed, "I'll come by after this shift, don't freak out." Those last 3 words settled over me, and something inside me went very still. I slipped my ring into a side pocket of my bag and zipped it shut. Then I dragged a chair to the opposite side of the table facing the door. It felt dramatic, sure, but I did not trust myself to stay calm. I wanted him to walk in and see his secret life printed in plain view. While I waited, I kept refreshing the streaming account, watching the active status dot. At one point it flicked on just for a minute, then off again. So wherever he was working, he still had time to log in there. I stared at that tiny indicator and knew tonight would not end softly. The lock turned and my whole body went rigid in the chair. I kept my hands flat on my legs so I would not grab anything. The stack of statements sat in the center of the table like a trap. For a second I almost jumped up and hid everything, then the door opened. He stepped in, saw the papers, and stopped halfway between us. His gaze ran over the pages, then flicked to my face, then back. "That looks dramatic." He dropped his bag by the wall without breaking eye contact. I could feel my heartbeat in my tongue, but my voice came out steady. "Come closer." I nudged the top sheet forward with one finger. He did not move right away, just crossed his arms over his chest. "Is this why you were blowing up my phone?" His mouth twisted around the words. "Because you have been snooping and freaking yourself out." I pulled our joint records. I tapped a circle around one of the charges. "Pretty sure that is not snooping, it is basic self-defense." He exhaled hard through his nose, then dropped into the chair across from me. The wooden legs scraped the floor between us like a warning line. I flipped the first page so the gambling payments faced him in neat rows. "Here is the betting stuff," I said, forcing each word out slowly. "You already promised you were done with this piece, remember Sunday?" His jaw shifted left as he glanced at the figures, then away toward the wall. "I told you I messed up there." He ran a hand over his hair. "I deleted the app. I am already cutting back. I just need time." I slid the next sheet on top before he could build another excuse. "This is not what I am asking about tonight. This is old news." The new page showed only the streaming site payments, all highlighted. His eyes hit the logo at the top and went wide for a heartbeat. Then his shoulders lifted in this shrug that almost made me laugh. He actually tried a half smile, like we were caught in a silly misunderstanding. "That platform is just online shows." He pushed the paper back toward me. "Everyone checks those out sometimes. It is not a big relationship crisis." I pushed it right back across the table until our fingers almost touched. "You are not a random guy browsing, you are a regular customer there." His tongue darted over his teeth as he scanned the amounts again. "Those are exaggerating it," he muttered, tapping one of the dates with a nail. "They bundle charges. It is not as heavy as it looks on paper." I let that hang for a second, then pulled out the printed screenshot. I set the page with his favorite creator on top of everything else. His username sat under the top supporter badge like a trophy he forgot. He froze on that image longer than on any number I had shown him. The muscles in his neck jumped once as he swallowed hard. "You are sending her money every week." I tapped the total tips column. "You bought private sessions on holidays. You signed up for monthly access." I watched his nostrils flare like he wanted to snatch the sheet and rip it. You told her you wished you were there in person one day. His head snapped up and his eyes narrowed straight at me. You went into my email. He jabbed a finger toward my side of the table. You went through my messages and reset my password and everything. I felt heat climb up my face, but I refused to look away. Yeah, I did. My voice shook, but I kept going anyway. I needed to know if my fiance was just reckless with money or more. He laughed once sharp and spread his hands like he found his defense. So you violate my privacy, then call me the untrustworthy one. That is not privacy, that is a whole fake life funded with my savings. I stabbed at another line where he promised the girl he would all. I support. You told her you felt unappreciated here, that she is the only one who gets you. Each quote stung fresh, even though I had read them 3 times already. He shoved his chair back and started pacing behind it, hands flexing. This is not the same as me hooking up with someone, he snapped toward the window. I have never touched her, it is just streaming, it is fantasy, everyone knows that. His voice bounced off the walls while my chest tightened like a knot. You bought her attention with the money we set aside for our life. I stood now too, matching his height so he could not loom over me. You are borrowing against our future so some stranger will call you her favorite. I heard my own tone and realized I had crossed from hurt into fury. He dragged a hand over his face and let out a broken groan. You do not understand what it is like when work drains everything out. I log on, she smiles, she remembers details, it makes the rest feel less heavy. That sight and the bets helped me cope when I felt like I was drowning. Part of me heard that, and for a tiny second I hesitated. I know what burnout feels like, I know the numb autopilot he described. But then my eyes dropped to the totals again and the sympathy evaporated. You used the emergency fund as a coping tool, that is not coping. He slumped back into the chair, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. Fine, he muttered, voice rough, I crossed lines, but it is still just online. I reached into the folder and pulled out one last page I almost did not print. Then explain the travel inquiry, I said, sliding it across like a final card. It was an email thread with customer support from the streaming service. The staffer confirmed his question about meeting creators at an upcoming fan event. In his message, he had mentioned finally getting to see her off camera. The reply said those meetups were reserved for top contributors only. His eyes flicked over the email once, then twice, like he hoped it would rearrange. That was just curiosity, he muttered, jaw tight. I never booked anything, obviously. But you considered it, I pushed, leaning on the table with both hands. You pictured yourself traveling to see this woman while I stayed home budgeting. He stared at the edge of the table, fingers digging into the wood. I was never actually going to go, I just wanted to know if it was possible. That does not make it better, I whispered, my throat too tight for volume. It just means you were halfway out of this relationship in your head. Silence stretched between us, only our breathing filling the space in uneven bursts. He finally looked up, and for the first time that night he looked scared. What are you going to do? He asked, voice small, almost like a kid. That question hit me harder than any of his excuses, because I realized I actually had options. I froze the joint card this afternoon, I straightened, feeling my spine lock. I am calling the bank in the morning about separating as much as possible. I will not share access with someone who treats our account like a tip jar. The words surprised me as they came out, but once spoken they felt solid. His mouth opened, then closed again, like he could not grab the right argument. We can fix this together, he finally pushed out, reaching across the table. I can enroll in a program, I can cut ties with her, I can rebuild. His fingers stopped a few inches from mine, hovering over the paperwork. I looked at his hand, then at the ring bulging against the bag zipper. For a moment I saw the version of us that never hit this point. The one where our savings grew and our fights stayed small and recoverable. Then my eyes fell back on the bold top supporter badge and that version evaporated. I am not making decisions tonight, I said, stepping back from the table. I am angry, I am hurt, and I do not trust my own judgment right now. But I am not pretending this is just a rough patch either. His face crumpled at that last line, and I knew the next days would tear both of us up. I slipped the ring off before the sun was even up. It caught on my knuckle for a second like it knew what was happening. I set it in the center of the table, not on a nightstand, not anywhere soft. Something about that flat thud made the whole thing feel more real than last night. My overnight bag was already half packed from when I had just-in-case thoughts. I shoved in enough clothes for a few days: charger, toothbrush, work laptop. No framed photos, no sentimental stuff, nothing that would tempt me to stay. The zipper stuck halfway, and I yanked it until my arm hurt. Behind me, I heard the couch creak and his groggy voice. "You're really leaving?" He scrubbed his face with both hands, eyes swollen. "I said I would fix this. We can figure it out together." He reached out like he wanted to touch my arm and stopped halfway. "I need space to ink without you spinning things." I kept my gaze low. "If I stay here, you talk and I start doubting myself again." He flinched at that, more than at the ring sitting a few feet away. "That's not fair," he muttered, shoulders sagging. "I'm not trying to control you." Maybe not on purpose. I picked up the bag and adjusted the strap. But every time I confront you, suddenly there is another angle, another excuse. You are great at explaining everything away until the numbers show up. His jaw tightened, but he did not argue, and that silence said enough. "I called my friend last night." I forced my fingers to unclench around the handle. "I'm staying with her for a while, just until I figure next steps." He shook his head slowly, like he could reverse the conversation by sheer effort. "We're supposed to be planning a wedding, not moving into spare bedrooms. That version of us was saving, not funding strangers and chasing losses." The words came out rough, like I had been chewing on them all night. "We can't just skip over what you did and pick colors and cake." His face twisted then, and for the first time I saw real panic. He stepped around the table and dropped to his knees in front of me. I canceled the site. He pulled out his phone with clumsy hands. "Look, I closed the account. I deleted the logins. I even emailed them." The screen showed confirmations and a form response, all time stamped after our fight. "I'm glad you did that." I watched his thumb hover like he wanted praise. "But that does not magically refill what you drained or rebuild trust. This isn't about just that girl or just those games anymore. It's about the fact that you hid all of it right under my nose." He grabbed the nearest chair and dropped into it like his legs gave out. "You want me to go to meetings? I'll go." His voice cracked halfway through. "I can talk to a counselor, give you every password, whatever it takes. I just need you to stay long enough to see I mean it." I rested the bag by the door and leaned against the frame, absolutely exhausted. "Maybe you really will get help." I believed that part more than yesterday. "You're smart enough to understand you crossed every line you had. But I can't be the one babysitting your progress while my own life stalls." He stared at the ring on the table like it might answer for me. "Are you ending this right now?" he asked, voice low, "or just taking a break?" That question lodged in my throat, heavier than anything else he had said. The honest answer scared me almost as much as staying. "I don't know yet." My eyes stung, but I kept my spine straight. "I know I can't marry someone who gambles with me like this. I know I need advice from someone who isn't invested in you. So I'm going to talk to professionals and figure out what I'm actually tied to." He let out a harsh breath and scrubbed his face once more. "So that's it, you walk out, talk to strangers, decide if I'm worth keeping." The bitterness in his tone landed, and yeah, it hurt because part of it was true. I also knew staying out of guilt would wreck both of us even more. I grabbed my keys, checked my pocket for my phone, checked again. He watched every tiny movement like he wanted to memorize the routine. "I'll let you know before I come back to get the rest." My hand paused on the knob, waiting for him to throw one last promise. Instead, he whispered, "I really thought I could handle it," barely louder than a breath. And now I'm watching the only good thing I had walk out. That line cut deep because I used to love being his reason to breathe. Now I had to choose being my own. At the bank, the manager listened while I stumbled through the story. "My partner used our shared funds for gambling and adult streaming," I forced out. The words sounded surreal coming out of my mouth in that neutral office voice. She nodded, tapped her keyboard, and started listing options like she'd heard it before. We went through every card, every line, every transfer with my name attached. She helped me open an individual account, just mine, no extra access. We flagged certain charges for possible disputes, even though I knew many wouldn't qualify. Protect yourself first, she said, sliding me a printed breakdown. You can untangle emotions later. That sentence stuck in my head while I waited outside for my ride. Up until then, I had been trying to solve feelings and finances at once. In that parking lot, I let myself separate them for the first time. One was heartbreak, the other was damage control, and both were huge. I moved into my friend's place that afternoon, bag digging into my shoulder. She opened the door, took one look at my face, and pulled me in without asking questions. I'll grab you some water, she murmured, giving me time to not immediately collapse. The second she stepped away, I sank onto her couch and actually started shaking. When she came back, I just handed her the printout with the numbers. I watched her eyes scan the totals, then the streaming site name, then my ringless hand. Her mouth tightened and she let out a low whistle through her teeth. Okay, she said, this is worse than he made a dumb bet one time. We spent hours mapping out the next week on a notepad. Call a therapist, contact an attorney, check credit reports, change passwords. Basic stuff, but writing it down made it feel like a plan instead of chaos. Every new bullet point was a small piece of control returning. That night, my phone lit up nonstop with messages from him. Long paragraphs about shame, about childhood, about stress, mixed with concrete promises. Screenshots of canceled services, sign-up confirmation for a recovery group. A photo of our table bare, the ring still sitting alone in the middle. I read them all, but I did not rush to answer any. The older version of me would have jumped in, soothed him, reassured him. This version let the text stack up while my chest throbbed with conflicting feelings. Compassion and self-preservation wrestled in the same tight space. I eventually responded with 3 lines and no emojis. I see you're taking steps, I hope you keep going with that. I'm focusing on my own support right now, so I won't reply much. I'll reach out when I'm ready to talk about logistics. His reply came fast, just 2 words. Please don't. I stared at that message until my eyes blurred. Then I turned the phone face down and left it that way. Within a few days, I sat in a therapist's office tripping over my own story. I kept alternating between anger and humiliation, sometimes in the same sentence. I should have caught this sooner, I muttered, twisting a tissue into a rope. I kept giving him the benefit of the doubt because I didn't want my life to explode. She listened, then asked one question that lodged in my ribs. If a friend told you this exact story, what would you advise her? I did not even hesitate. Get out of the shared finances, pause the engagement, demand transparency if she stays. My voice went very small on that last part, which told me everything. I met with a lawyer next, which felt surreal for someone not married yet. We went over my legal exposure, his separate obligations, what I could separate cleanly. It wasn't as simple as I wanted, but it also wasn't hopeless. There were paths where I wasn't dragged down with him if he kept sliding. Walking out of that building, I realized something that still makes me wince. For weeks I had been more worried about being mean than being safe. I had let my image of being a supportive partner outweigh basic self-respect. That mix of guilt and clarity is a special kind of dizzy. Eventually, I knew I had to go back to the apartment one more time. Not to talk everything out, not to rehash, just to collect what was mine. I texted him the day and time and asked him to be gone. He agreed, then still waited inside when I unlocked the door. He stood in the living room with a small box in his hands. I packed your stuff, he said quietly, eyes rimmed with exhaustion. This is the last thing. He raised the box slightly like an offering. Inside, on top of folded clothes, sat the ring in its original case. I thought you might want to decide what to do with it yourself. His voice trembled, but he kept a respectful distance for once. I'm starting the program tomorrow. I'm meeting with a financial counselor. I know that might not matter to you anymore, but I'm doing it anyway. For the first time since everything blew up, I believed he might actually be serious. Not for me, not for some performer on a screen, but for himself. And here is the messed up part that made me both relieved and furious. Because I had begged him to care this much before everything shattered. I hope you stick with it, I said, picking up the box. I really do, not so we can be together again, but so you don't destroy your own life. His face twitched like that sentence hurt more than if I'd screamed. He nodded once and stepped back, giving me a clear path to the door. Later, back at my friend's place, I opened the little case alone. The ring caught the light and looked exactly like it did when I said yes. Nothing about its shape had changed, but my whole perspective around it had. Sometimes the symbol stays pretty while the meaning rots underneath. I didn't throw it away, even though part of me wanted that drama. Instead, I put it in an envelope, sealed it, and wrote his name on the front. I'll mail it when I'm ready, or drop it off, or maybe never. For now, the important part is that it's not on my hand. So that's where I'm at while typing this out tonight. Living out of a borrowed room, juggling bank calls, therapy, and work, feeling both broken and weirdly lighter. I don't know yet if this ends in a clean breakup or some complicated future conversation. I just know I'm due. Funding anybody's fantasy at the cost of my own.